Hello, everybody. This is another episode of Chaos Daily with me, Chris Sarda, the daily short show the semi-daily short show, where I go through some of the top stories that are happening in sports today. We're going to talk a little bit about them, throw them up on the internet, and try to get these guys, Angelo and Wayne, onto the night show and have a longer sort of talk about them. So let's start with the big news, the overarching news overall, over the entire sports world is when and how some of these sports are going to come back. And we're going to get into that. But over the last couple of weeks, we've started to get like little hints and touches of sports everywhere, including the match, which was not even a professional sport. It was an exhibition where Tom Brady Mickelson and Tom Brady played Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning in a charity golf match that averaged 5.8 million viewers, and I heard peaked at over 6 million viewers on Turner Sports, which is huge. I mean, if the charity golf matches happen all the time. Jordan has one here out in Vegas all the time. And you don't hear much about it, but when you get something like this and it infuses an excitement throughout sports, it matters, And I mean, let's not shy away from the $20 million that they raised for COVID-19 cases. I just want to point out that I only watched a little bit of this, but it was strange to see golf have personality, and golf is normally this, comes off as this gentleman's sport that one needs to wear a collared shirt and there's rules and things you got to do to be proper in the world of golf. We found out that Justin Thomas was funny. Charles Barkley we knew was crazy. I might actually watch golf if there was an energy and excitement to it. And I think I see this in books, I see this in film, I see this everywhere. The idea of gatekeepers holding things back. And to some extent, you need to sell to your base. Those golf fans, those are the ones that will always be there. But like I talked about last week in the only Chaos Daily that I did, is that we're not in a situation anymore where you only can have one feed. Like, we're in a situation, and this is not even a coronavirus thing. We're in a situation today where there can be multiple feeds marketed. So you can have your typical boring golfer. I don't even know golf announcers. I know their voices because I do stop by, or when I bet on the Masters or something like that, I am listening. But there is no reason that you can't have a couple personality guys like Justin Thomas, who are probably playing golf at the time in these tournaments, so he's not available, or Charles Barkley, or someone that knows golf that's fun to listen to. And I don't know why that's not tried. I take that back. It has been tried, and I'll tell you an example of it. I don't know why that's not just done, because it could be very cheap. You don't need to get Charles Barkley's and people you got to pay a lot of money to do it. This could be like a testing ground for personalities and stuff like that. This was tried in the Dana White show, the Dana White's that amateur show where they fight on UFC Fight Pass to see if Dana White gives them a contract. So you had the typical two announcers. They changed a lot, that would do the announcing, and they were professional, and it was how it should be. But on the other side, you had an announcing crew that had Snoop Dogg on it, that only knew so much, and he was just having fun. And to tell you the truth, it wasn't that great. But that kind of thing can be expanded. I don't know why with today's technology we don't have, I guess I do know why, but it shouldn't be this case. We don't have the power from home to choose the camera we want to see. I've seen that with some NBA and some soccer where they have those feeds, but we can really expand this. And some of these sports like baseball is another example, and golf, that could use an injection of personality, and not for the old guys, Not for the people, not for the base, not for people like me that are going to watch golf anyway, or baseball anyway. Angela that's going to watch baseball anyway. But just an opportunity for new people to get in with something exciting or some kind of personality that doesn't take all of this too seriously, which is really what we need to start doing, is not take any of this too seriously. So the 5.8 million viewers, I don't think that was because Charles Barkley and Justin Thomas were on the mic. I think they turned out to be a fun thing that happened. Obviously, 5.8 million viewers is because we're so hungry for sports, and UFC's new enough that it doesn't have this big base, although I know that they did very well, that's for sure. But they don't have this huge base of people. Also, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, those are draws, especially on the football side. Next up, speaking of, we touched on UFC for a minute here. Mike Tyson has started showing videos and showing that he's going to train and that he wants to fight. And there's a lot of takes on that. I mean, my opinion is, that's what he decided his body was for, essentially. I know that he's too old, and safety is a concern if he passes the physicals and whatnot. I'm fine and okay with it. I'd love to see him go back out there. And then there's been talk about Evander Holyfield, and a lot of people have been popping up. But what I want to point out is something that BoxingScene.com reported, and that Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship is in the mix. And now this is not going to happen, but it should. It absolutely should. President David Feldman stated in a recent interview that he plans to submit an increased offer to former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson. Now, Mike Tyson and the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, that's cool enough. That's worth a watch alone. But what I think is even better is Wanderlei Silva, is the talk that Wanderlei Silva would get into the, it's not even a ring really, but would get into the we'll call it a ring, into the ring, I guess it is a ring, into the ring for Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. So Wanderlei Silva, for those that don't know, his nickname is the Axe Murderer. He's 43 years old now. There was a time when he was the scariest man in mixed martial arts, and that was fighting at middleweight or at light heavyweight for the most part. The scariest man. He was the original. He was the original matchup that was between someone in the UFC and outside the UFC that everyone wanted. We all wanted at their peak Chuck Liddell and Wanderlei Silva. It ended up happening, but a little bit later. It's still a good fight, but not the same, right? And I know some people would want to say Fedor versus someone, but Fedor versus whoever kept changing, right? This one was for a while that Liddell and Wanderlei. So now he's 43. Fighting's a little bit behind him. He's taken a few beatings. I don't think he's signed with the UFC anymore. And he said that he was offered $10 million from Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship to fight Mike Tyson. Now, Mike Tyson is not going to do this. It's very unlikely. He looks like he's trying to fight with gloves and whatnot, as this article implies. But that is a old man exhibition bout that I would pay to see, especially bare knuckle, especially with the attitude we've heard from Mike Tyson, the kind of guy he is. I don't know how he's going to get $20 million to fight, though, a regular boxing match, especially one that's going to be, mostly talked down and despised and whatnot. But, it actually turns into a great matchup because, one, it's bare knuckle, so it's a little bit different. Number two, he'll be fighting an MMA fighter that, is old and obviously past his prime, but just known for being, an intense, crazy fighter, much like Mike Tyson was in the early 90s. And it's just, the rules are just different enough. The ring is just different enough. Everybody is just old enough that Wanderlei Silva versus Mike Tyson in a fight that's only fists without gloves actually entices me. Actually makes me think, it makes me not sure who'd win. I got to go Wanderlei personally still, but it's only boxing. And Mike Tyson is, I know we think of him as a monster that tears people up, but he's not Francis Ngannou. He is a powerful guy that knew how to box too, knows a lot about boxing, is a student of the game, loves boxing. To put him on that level, to put him on the new level of a bare knuckle fight against someone like Wanderlei, really interests me. As so long as I can like jump over the fact that these guys are way past their prime and shouldn't be in the ring together. The way I get over that though, morally or logically, is that Mike Tyson and Wanderlei, this is what they set their body for. This is what they made their body to do, was to be fighters, and they're not doing this you're not doing this every week. They're not having 3 or 4 fights a week or a month or year. Doing this at this age, they're like the modern form of a warrior. They want to get into that gladiator cage one more time for money as prize fighters, So, I like the idea. There's no shot in hell it happens. Boxing Scene did report it, and it was just something that I thought was interesting. The real story here is whether Mike Tyson gets into the ring at all again, and who he gets into the ring with, because that loss, he had a string of 3 losses that were not great. I think it was Kevin Bird, that were not great, and that was in 2005, and he retired. Supposedly his mind is right now. He's smoking a lot of weed. And he wants to box again, so why not? I'd love to see him without the gloves, though. That's for sure. Last story. Now, baseball's almost sure. Baseball's working hard to come back in July, and that's something I'll talk more about in detail. What I do want to say is Charles Barkley's recent quotes on ESPN's The Paul Feinbaum Show, that he's 100% sure the NBA will come back. He gets this from his bosses at TNT, and that makes sense. That makes sense that TNT would know something, but at the same time, 100%. Barkley's saying he's 100% sure because of what he heard from TNT. We don't know how sure they are. And all we know about them is they just need to be ready. Like, they need to be able to snap the fingers and cancel the shows they have scheduled. Reruns of Friends or whatever the hell they're putting on now. That there's some weird basketball tournament happening in Orlando in some bubble, So Barkley's 100% sure. I think I'm 100% sure the same way Barkley's 100% sure. The puzzles seem to be coming into place. Of course, no fans will be in the stadiums or in the arenas, and that's obvious. The next step is to make sure that the players are safe, but that's going to be hard. Like many articles have pointed out, and we've pointed out before in this podcast, that how do you leave them in a bubble? Like, are maids in the bubble? Are food service preparers in a bubble? What do you do? Are you just putting them in a bubble? Are you quarantining or separating players in a bubble because of the way it looks to the rest of the world? But hoping no one mentions the maids in the hotel rooms, and hoping no one mentions the food preparers, hoping no one mentions whatever entourages are around and whatnot. You think rich-ass players can't sneak things from outside? You better have a setup there. You better have a nice setup there. So how effective it can be, I don't know. And if that breaks, if that little system breaks, the scandal will be huge. And if that system breaks and there's a COVID outbreak, then it's all over. Then I don't know when we'll get sports again. And this is just so different from the UFC and what the UFC did, even from the golf tournament that we just mentioned. It's just so different because those were single events and everyone went home afterwards. And then when there was another event in a week or two, in a few days, or a different group of people, you just went through the process again, and for you to hold something like 400 NBA players, I think it's 450 that are on active rosters that, a lot of them are bench guys or whatnot, but that are on the rosters. And then everything that's built around them, team doctors, how much do you have to pay them? Are they going to stay quarantined? And then you got to move all that into a bubble for a number of weeks. That's a lot harder than the event situation that the UFC and boxing and this charity golf tournament is. So baseball and hockey, and basketball have some work to do. Where the NFL, the NFL just gets to sit and wait and react. Like if the NFL fucks it up, if the NFL messes it up, it's something bigger. Something bigger has happened, and all this is happening too, by the way, while we're not out of the woods. We're in the exact same position. There's more testing available, thank God, but we're in the exact same position we were a couple months ago. Now we're just now we're pretending social distancing is working and whatnot. So as those things are lifted and as, hopefully it doesn't happen, but as those numbers get bigger, then, the economy and the government and us as Americans are going to have to face something even bigger in the middle of watching all these sports and bubbles or whatnot. I tell you what, though, if a lockdown does happen and this bubble stuff happens, it'll be a lot easier to be locked down with a bunch of sports on TV. That'll be for sure. So anyway, that was Chaos Daily. I just wanted to go through 3 quick stories. You can find us at Chaotic Sports on Twitter, at Chaotic Sports Podcast on Instagram. Some random guy has at Chaotic Sports. But at Chaotic Sports Podcast on Instagram, you can find me at Chris Sard on Twitter. Thank you guys for watching. You guys have a great day. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow.